Tuesday, March 2nd. This is the Curriculum Committee. It's 8:03. And we'll just go around the table. I'm Erin Dowd, School Board Member. Bonnie Schmidt, School Board Member.
Nancy Justman, School Board Member.
Laura Jackson, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Jen Wimmer is here attending virtually. She is the superintendent.
Tim Harder, Director of Technology.
Kevin High, Curriculum Coordinator.
Heidi Spingola, Curriculum Coordinator.
Jennifer Boyer, Curriculum Assistant.
Erin Faust, WBVA K-5 Coordinator.
The first item on our agenda today is Start College Now and Early College Credit. And the reason I put it on the Curriculum Committee agenda is normally when we have the Curriculum Committee operating, we bring this to the Curriculum Committee and then bring it to the full board at the next board meeting. However, the due date for students was yesterday. So the counselor at the high school is currently tabulating and doing all of the verifications that need to happen for Start College Now and Early College Credit courses to be approved. And our next meeting is then until April, and we would want to have these approved for the students in March yet. So that would mean that we'll need to, excuse me. We're close to that time. I can turn off the desk phone. Sorry. So that would mean that we would need to bring it to approval before the Curriculum Committee has seen it. So you would first see it with the full board. The Start College Now gives, and Early College Credit gives students in high school the opportunity to take classes at a four-year college or a technical college, and have they don't have to pay for the courses. The district covers the cost of that, and the university or the tech college also share in some by reducing some of the costs. The students have to meet certain criteria in order to take the classes, and the classes have to be cannot be matched to something that's offered in the district. So the counselors do that verification. The students meet the criteria and do the classes meet the criteria that they've requested. If you recall, students typically request a lot of courses that, and then when the timing of those are known, they end up reducing their load. They're able to take 18 credits through this, 18 college credits through this program, and before they graduate. But, and again, the counselors verify what they've already taken before those courses then are brought to the board for approval.
How do the students know what's available? I mean, if they're trying to figure it out right now, college courses aren't even out for next fall yet.
No, so they're really kind of going by what has been in the course books. We've run into this before where, so the deadline of October 1st and March 1st is in the state statute. And because that was written into the statute, we follow that. And then but unfortunately, sometimes classes don't run, so that the students have registered for, or the course has changed. And for example, a student wanted to take an engineering course at MSOE for fall this year, and in August, we learned that they realigned their courses, so the course as he selected was no longer offered. The replacement course was available to him. And the replacement course had a different name, many of the same objectives and outcomes, but they had realigned their programming. So we always have discussion about whether or not we can allow that one to go because it wasn't the approved one. But if it's a very close match, then we can allow it. If it was entirely different, like they registered for a Spanish class at the university, that's not being offered, and now they want to take math, we couldn't do that big of a switch. But in a case where they realigned their programming, renamed the course, it's almost the same course, we could do that.
It's like new packaging,
Yes.
same thing on the inside, okay.
Well, okay, so, I'm sorry, you just brought up a whole host of other questions. So, it's been a long time since I was in college, but I do have 2 kids in college, so I'm kind of aware of costs. So you're telling me that the district would allow someone to take an MSOE course? What are we paying for that?
I don't know, off the top of my head, I'd have to look, but the cost, it's laid out through DPI, how much of it we pay. Some, depending on what the student is taking, there is a 25% match that the family would be paying. And,
I mean, so if I'm taking graphics at MPTC, I have no idea, let's just call it graphics for the sake of this conversation, and I'm taking engineering at MSOE, huge price difference.
correct.
That doesn't really seem equitable and fair. It would seem like the district would have a stopgap, like we're only going to pay X dollars.
No, according to the statutes.
It's the state
Yeah,
that
the state.
drives that.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
then we get
yeah,
a
we've
portion
had that
of it
for a
back.
while.
So we get some of that money back, every, I don't remember when it is.
We
At
get a
some point,
payment
I
out.
have to, submit to DPI how much we paid out, and then they reimburse us a portion of it.
Isn't there some requirement that they need to demonstrate that they can't get that class
Yeah,
here
that's the
or
match.
locally? And, I mean, it's very rare.
So I've done these both as a teacher and I review some of the start college now. So if the counselor has a question of, so let's use graphics, I used to teach graphic communications up here. If a kid wanted to go in digital media and graphics to Marine Pump and they walked in the door and said, I want to take this class, and the counselor wasn't sure, the sheet would come down to me, we would match it and say, guess what, Nancy, sorry, you can't take the class because this exact same class is offered here, it's just called advanced photography or whatever else. A lot of the kids who are taking these courses are continuing their academic and career plan. So they've been through multiple technical college credit courses with us, they've exhausted our engineering program here, some of those additional pieces that go with it, and then they go through approval process. We had a kid a couple years ago who put in for 16 credits, literally only took 4. Because they're blanket monkeying this idea of what if this course doesn't run, it doesn't match with my high school schedule, all of that.
So
And
that's,
so it's a required by statute that we can't stop, I can't say to Tani, well, your class at MSOE costs us $2,000, but your class at MPTC only cost me $300, and I'm just making those numbers
Sure,
up.
right.
We have no say over that in terms of what that looks like.
However, you also can't say, well, I want to take graphics at Marquette. I don't care that it's also offered at NPTC or here at the high school, and I want the district to pay for it. That's
Okay.
not, that can't happen.
We see kids, we had a young lady that I taught before I left the classroom, she exhausted all of her programming in digital media, and then she did start college now. She had basically all but one semester of her 2-year associate's degree done before she left high school.
And that
And
absolutely
so
makes sense.
they have that opportunity, that's where
Absolutely.
they're coming in from it, but yeah, there's no way to distinguish yours costs more than Tommy's or vice versa. and
Well,
you
it doesn't seem very fair and equitable when that's what we're all about in the state of Wisconsin. And I would think that DPI and the state would take a look at that and kind of come up with some better guidelines than that. I mean, I'm all about kids getting extra credits before they leave here, 100% for sure. I just don't know that the taxpayer should be on the hook for an MSOE course when there could be one at UW-Milwaukee. So that's my question.
And I think a lot of it pertains.
Like I have a serious problem with that. As a taxpayer, that bugs me.
And I think a lot of it,
Yeah,
Nancy,
I
ties
agree.
into if you have college kids, and I remember this in college, you know, this idea of transfer credits and the fact that the credit from the UW to MSOE, let alone the tech school to UW, does that really transfer over and is it the same course? So DPI really pushes it around the idea of the course and where you plan on going and what you want to do versus the cost piece. Because you're right, there is a big, you see that even in the UW system, between UW schools.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, there is that side of it that we don't have control over.
That would seem like a legislative problem that we might want to address with our legislative officials, don't you? Okay,
Ultimately, we have no say in
and they do, the credit, I'd have to go back and look and see what the MSOE credit cost us, but if I recall correctly, well, I'd have to go back and look. But they are reduced from, like, we don't pay for credit, 600 credit, we're not paying that for the kids to attend there. So it is reduced for the schools, and then, and that's that, like, partnership with whatever college and institution it is. And and again, they're limited to 18 credits that they can take, 18 college level credits that they can take through this program.
For their whole career, not like per semester, like for their whole high school.
For their whole high school career.
Yeah, they can't go to high school till they're 20. Because they're like taking.
Otherwise, I would know some kids that should try that.
That's a serious
Yes.
workaround.
Yeah.
I'm getting my college paid for because I'm still in high
Because
school.
I'm still in high school, okay.
How does this like logistically work? How do kids find out about this program? I don't think like it's really out there. Like my kids have never talked to me about this program. So I'm just trying to think, like, is it through the counselors?
It's in the course planning guide. And
Yeah.
so at the, both programs are explained in the course planning guide. So that's one way, if they're looking through that. The second way would be through communication with their counselors, information that's sent to the students, or through newsletter. Start College Now, due dates are coming up. I know they do it in announcements, and the College Career Center puts that out too. When we had flexi time, so schedules are adjusted this year to allow for more passing time, so that time they had, where they were, not homerooms, but they had
Resource.
the resource, it isn't going through the same way, but in the past it would have been announced in there too.
So one last question, what programs do we see taking the most advantage of this? I'm assuming graphics would make the most sense, quite honestly, because I know that we have limited resources, so I can appreciate if I've taken all the graphics courses by the time I'm a senior, this would make sense. What other courses? You said engineering, who else is?
They'll take like, some of their women's studies or.
Oh, so kind of some of their
anthropology.
Okay, or those, whatever, humanities credits, whatever.
Correct.
And I think for, you know, like, when we get into the Marine Park credits, a lot of our kids have already earned the 12s, 15s, 20 credits here before they've even gone there. So if I'm looking to go, and so like the program I'm most familiar with is a digital media program. It's not just the 12 credits that Mike Bentel teaches as part of his, it's the 6 credits that are offered in business ed, it's the 7 credits down the hallway or 10 credits in graphic communications. So these kids have exhausted and probably sit with 15 to 20 credits already. Or we just purely don't offer this. So like we've talked, I think I put in the last board update, you know, we're working on the ag vet science opportunity with Kewaskum. Prior to this, our kids would take, if they're looking for college credit, they would still need to do this, but they might take an EC course or a Start College Now course and give them that opportunity, so we just don't offer it here. But a lot of those kids, I've maxed out in the programming we offer here, and it's 2, 3, 4 deep sometimes, which is great. It's just, they're now that further ahead than every other kid who doesn't have that experience in high school at another school.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the third calc class.
Yeah, that'd be one I'd be signing up for sure.
So they'll, I was trying to, a lot of the humanities and like I said, they'll often try to get some of their gen eds done.
Well, it's a great way to start your college, especially with those humanities credits. I mean, let's just be honest, those were not many of our favorites, I'm sure, unless someone wants to speak differently, but if you could knock that out now, rather than sit through that in college on your own dime.
And I think it takes planning from middle school, basically, in order to exhaust everything through high school, doesn't it?
Well,
In certain career pathways, yes. I mean,
Mhm.
there are other career pathways where you might, so like our automotive, some in business, some in, you know, in other areas in family consumer science, you only get that 1 or 2 opportunity for that credit as you go through 2 or 3 courses. But some of them, you have to hit it up so that you're going through all of this and then still have time in your high school career to take classes, you know, not just in the sense that you have to have your senior year, but you also have to have time in your schedule with your other courses to leave for 2 hours and go somewhere.
And these are the kids that end up getting accepted, you know, they make West Bend look good as they get accepted to exceptional universities, and that's kind of how they do it.
every now and then we have, like Tim shared about one of the students, there are others that have graduated with, very close to finishing their associate's degree. And they can get into the workforce rather quickly, which is awesome.
I'm assuming this year we saw most of those courses online then for the students, as opposed to going to a physical campus?
Yeah, most of them are online. So that will come to the board, and what you'll see, you won't see any student names, but you'll see the list of courses that we're asking for student approval for students to take. And so that will come forward on the 22nd of March. The next item on the agenda is the Virtual Academy program discussion. I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Virtual Academy. And we're into the second semester, how things are going, and what our process is for planning for next year. As you'll recall, the Virtual Academy had been in existence for a number of years as WBOLA. And the intent was to open that up K-12. We had been watching the students exit the system to go to other districts in order to access online education at the lower levels. So we had intended to open that up K-12. And we had ideas of how many students it would be. Obviously, the pandemic changed that significantly. And in looking at a survey of feedback we sent to virtual families, asking them to provide some feedback and information, most of them indicated that the reason they selected it was for the pandemic, because of the pandemic. So as we look over what are some of how did second semester implementation go, for new students in the second semester, our success coach met with them individually or in small groups, but met with them to walk them through what the platform looks like, how they're going to log in, how they're going to get to their lessons, how they're going to monitor their progress, how they're going to submit things. And he met with them about developing a schedule and all of those pieces. The second semester new student launch was a lesser number of students, and that personalized approach, that orientation had gone well. So they felt like they were onboarded and knew what they were doing right away. The second semester, we started planning for that early, which was really important. And it went, we submitted everything to our virtual partners ahead of schedule so that we could get all the new courses uploaded and things like that. There were a few errors that occurred in that, and some adjustments made early. The errors were caught early, one of them being Flash retired, and our students were enrolled in a photography course that included Flash. So they had to be enrolled in the correct course, so they wouldn't have issues along the way. That correction occurred rather quickly, but it resulted in a lot of emails to students and families saying, "You've been dropped, now you've been added." And because each time something like that happens, the student gets the email, the parent gets the email, we all get the email.
So where does the fault lie in that? Because we've been getting notices for a year and a half saying Flash is gonna be dropped anytime you turn your computer on.
It's on them. So
Okay.
they carried historical classes over, so teachers had content access to go back and look at things.
Okay,
Somebody literally put these 20 some kids or whatever in the wrong section,
got it.
thinking that, well, that content's there and it's easier and, yeah. Yeah, we've known for a long time.
Oh, long time, yeah.
So if you didn't see the pop-up at some point on a website, yeah.
So there were just some little hiccups like that. Erin, Kevin, do you want to comment at all on the second semester implementation?
Other than that, going has been a lot smoother, having the team in place and processes in place. We've had a much better job having supports in place. I mean, Erin's been fantastic this year, but at the beginning of the year, she wasn't on until, September. So it's been nice having a whole team in place. And, teachers and kids are just more used to things, and so we've seen a lot better attendance and a lot better progress with kids. And, we've had kids that we had a really hard time getting a hold of, and first semester, and we have them on track second semester, so it's been a much better semester for sure.
One of the questions I get about the virtual academy is how do they check in for attendance? How do you make sure, verify that they're actually engaged and participating? Is that?
So our success coaches and our counselors up at the high school, they give reports to ensure that kids are progressing. So for instance, at the high school, after 4 weeks or whatever, we want to make sure the kids are 25% of the way by quarter, 50% of the way. And if they're not at that point, they get letters sent home. If
Okay.
they're not checking in, if they're not logging in, we start the truancy process at the high school. And I know Erin does her own attendance.
Yep.
And you get, how often is this happening? Is it out of alignment with truancy for in-person classes? Or is it exceptionally more?
I would say like at the upper levels, we're constantly checking. So it's a weekly process, we have meetings weekly, and we're checking up on kids and making sure. So if we notice, like for instance, a kid hasn't logged in since Tuesday, we're starting the 5-day letter process, and we're doing.
And I suppose if they're getting the emails about something, flash being dropped there, so parents are responding to because some people just don't check their emails,
And we do
they
have
can be-
people who don't respond to the
Okay.
emails and things like that. So this week, 25% letters, what I'll mean by that is what Kevin said. For the 7-12 students, if they are not 25% complete.
I'm sorry, just could you talk about how you find out that they're not 25% complete? Because this couldn't be more of my life right now, because I just got this letter, and then when I'll log on with my daughter, she's significantly ahead in one course, and she's on par in the other course, according to what's online, but yet I got a letter from you saying that she's basically not on par. So what's the check and balance here? Why is she seeing one thing on her screen, and I'm seeing it on her screen, but you apparently are getting something different?
So at the high school and at Badger, the teams at the schools log in and they look at, so on the day that the letters are sent, on the day of the midterm or mid-quarter, they log in and see where the student is on that day.
Right, she's been ahead the entire time, so that's my question. We've been watching this, so
I
I
think that
think
we
there's a
should-
communication breakdown somewhere.
I would say for then separately, we should talk about your daughter and log in and look at her.
Yeah, I've sent an email to ask you these questions.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what the check and balance is, because I'd hate to be that kid at home where now my parent just got that letter and I'm like, I'm ahead, like, leave me alone. And,
So there's
there's probably a communication concern.
And depending on where you're pulling it from in the system, we have, we verify the accuracy of the information we're looking at, because we have noted that from the platform view in one way, it looks like the student may be on pace, and they're not.
Well, then that's probably a concern for our students, don't you think? If they're
Oh, yeah.
seniors in high school and they're supposed to be on this themselves, I mean, that's a problem with the platform.
So they, when you go all the way in, then you can see accurately. But if you're at the very initial level, and so we've been working with Admentum on this on here, and I would say that's why we have to verify everything, because you can't miss if it is off on one. So
She's a
East,
senior.
right? East or
West.
Okay, so I will check in with the team on those, on all of it, but I will take a look at hers after this.
Can you add that?
Pardon me?
Maddie got a letter and she's not in a class this semester.
And so my point is there's a communication problem.
All right.
And if both of you have them, there are probably others.
Uh-huh.
I would just hate to be the kid who just got grounded at home and, or whatever, got his car taken away or his cell phone, because of a false letter or a, misled letter there, so. And if there really are two ways for the students to look at these, I would hope the students know that, because
Yeah.
she's certainly, what she showed me was
We
clear.
didn't have all.
Yeah, but which one are you gonna show your parent?
Well, I mean, I can appreciate some kids, but I mean, she's not a slacker, and she's got like an A in both classes, that's the other part, it's like, give me a break, I mean, there's clearly something that's not jiving, so, that, you know.
We had asked the question, what we've tried to communicate is the difference between the current grade and the course grade. And the feedback we've gotten from people who have communicated feedback is that they understand that now, but in talking with some parents, they still don't quite get that. The current grade is the grade on all of the work that has been corrected. And the course grade is, as far as you are in the course, what would your grade be if the course ended today? And that includes everything for the whole semester. So your current, like if you did 3 assignments and you did well on those, your current grade might be at 97%, and your course grade will show that. As we get.
Whoa.
How is, I'm sorry, what?
Your current grade,
Is a 97,
because you did 3 assignments.
but your course grade is an F, how is that?
Because the course grade includes everything for the full semester. So it shows too when you log into the system. It'll show the student, it will show the student their current grade.
Because it's like not a full, because the course isn't over yet.
Correct.
Right, so
isn't
what is
that
the letter generated from
That's
then?
that's a really,
We had to-
premature way of presenting,
Right,
because that's not even a progress, like, that's not even tracking progress, that's just, of course you'd be failing, so
correct.
that's
Which is,
really alarming and disturbing.
Which, yes, and so we've talked about that all along,
Okay,
that, you know, when the student looks into their dashboard, they can see their scores on every assignment. When they see the overview, they'll see the current grade and the course grade. Now, we have been far along in classes, and a student, you know, and so I'm going into last semester. So at this point where you should be 25% done, right? And a student is showing their parent their current grade when they really only have done 3, but there have been 15 assignments due. Their current grade is showing their grade on those 3 assignments.
those 3, what
They
they've
should
actually
have
turned
15
in.
done at the end of the semester. Let's say they would have 60 done, but they should have 15 done now. Their current grade of
Mhm.
97
Of what they've turned in.
doesn't show where they should be.
But there's also a bar on the bottom that says how far
Correct.
along you are. So I mean, if this is the 25% and the bar is showing that you're at 50%, that means you've worked ahead,
That doesn't
correct?
work that.
So then I'm saying then your
25% may not.
then your
have been
25% might be not valid. I mean, I guess there's several things you have to be looking at. Obviously, I know we've had a lot of problems with Adventum. This obviously continues to be a problem. I mean, I think you're expecting an awful lot when you expect parents to look in 17 different places for the information. That's irritating to parents. Even as a high school parent, that's irritating to me because we've got Skyward and we've got Canvas and now we've got Adventum. And it's a lot, and I can only imagine what a small, younger parent is probably frustrated beyond belief. Not to mention that they've had this kid at home and they're trying to, you know, help them, etc. So I guess my point is, I know that this was due to the pandemic. I think we all agree Adventum has not been without hiccups, and I'm trying to be very kind there, is the word I'm using. So I would hope that as we move forward, we look at some different options or some ways to streamline this so that parents aren't, the burden's not on the parent because people are just too busy. I mean, our kids are gonna keep falling through the cracks and you're gonna continue to have problems, and you can't put it all back on the parents, and parents can't be required to spend 3 hours a day trying to figure out their kids' schoolwork. It's impossible, these people work as well. So I mean, I guess from a frustration point, I can appreciate where people are frustrated, and I understand you are all frustrated as well. So I'm just kind of sharing the whole, like, it's not been a great process, and, you know, it can only get better from here, I would hope.
Is Adventum responding to these suggestions that, I mean, are they saying tough to deal with it, or are they
I
open
would say
to
with the
adapting?
tech things, some of them they've been able to address, some of them are lingering and have not been addressed, or have been addressed on one occasion but not globally.
Right.
And, so I would say, Tim works with their tech, department on the tech issues. I would say there are things lingering and there are, new things emerging throughout.
So I classify as there's things that need repair and there's improvements and there's
Right.
enhancements. So like when you talk about what you two are experiencing right here, this is a complete rewrite of their system and how it tracks kids.
Right.
And that's something with them, I would sure hope they don't deploy in the middle of the school year.
Right,
I'll
for
just
sure,
say it.
right.
Like, I would tell them if I
For
could
sure.
pause, like, I have lost enough hair in my lifetime and more probably this year. And so I think those are things that we give them feedback on. If they choose to use them in their future enhancements, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, or sometimes we don't hear. Like, I have not heard that they have a future plan for changing all of the tracking aspects of it. Other aspects, I just sent them something last night, 22 minutes later it was fixed. And so it depends upon the issue, but some of these are larger scale platform changes that honestly hope that we can just get ourselves through the year and not see a change now, because I think it will cause
Mhm.
more pain and suffering for our parents in understanding what the change is.
Well, and I don't wanna throw the baby out with the bathwater either. I mean, every platform is gonna have its own personality and set of challenges, and I don't want our parents to, every year, to have to deal with a brand new system and, I mean, I agree, it's
And-
totally messed up. That reporting is very odd and strange, but if, boy, the way you explained it made sense to me, even if though it's not how I would do it. I mean, you just learn and go with it. Otherwise, you're learning a whole nother thing, and we're dealing with an unknown set of challenges if we change to a different platform.
For our students who had been utilizing Wisconsin virtual schools through the WABOLA,
Mm-hmm.
we had allowed them to continue in that, again, like you're saying.
Mhm.
We didn't want them to adjust, and it's been working for them, so we had allowed them to continue. So we do have students who are utilizing that system as well. And it's about 35 to 38. I'd have to double check this.
Students?
Students,
Okay.
correct. Some of them.
Versus how many in the virtual academy, remind us?
So it's about 38 of the 900 some currently in there.
Okay, so very small percentage.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, because they had been using it all
Mhm.
along. And so, and some of them are full-time, some of them have always only taken a couple of courses in it. And then there's a student in there that the specific course was available in there, so we let him go there for it,
Mhm.
even though he hadn't been in there.
Mhm.
And so that being said, as we look over the challenges and the strengths, the challenges that we faced, that parents have found, that students have identified, and the successes that, from the parent perspective, from the teacher perspective, and from the student perspective, all of those things are important in our considerations as we move forward. And what has been learned as our teachers were engaged this year. If you recall, in the summer when we talked about this, the 3-year plan would have been to have our teachers, some of them start engaging in the virtual program next year, and then the 3rd year, really be utilizing a lot of our teachers. Well, obviously, things have really accelerated, and our teachers who are currently teaching virtual really found that they like it. We also have teachers in person who have found many benefits to when they are teaching students remotely, that they really enjoy that as well. So as we move forward with the program revision for 21-22 and really improving that, as we know that we will have some courses that are taught by our teachers that will depend on the grade levels of the students who actually sign up. So I would, right now, I would estimate maybe 10% of our current elementary kids would sign up going forward in a in fall. Say post-pandemic. in fall, roughly, it may, I have to look back at the respondents. So, right now, I would say about 10% of our elementary students, are responding that they would, continue. And
10% of the ones that are already in it?
already in it. And
Oh,
so
that's,
those-
okay.
Yeah.
So that's a significant decline.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are, again, are in it because of,
Mhm.
they wanted consistency, they didn't want to have to be
Mhm.
quarantined, they didn't want back and forth, in school, out of school for their students, and, committed to it for the year. That's some of the feedback we got, we've committed to this for the year because we don't want our students to be back and forth and back and forth.
Did your survey of students include asking them, is that because they anticipate the pandemic not being as much of a factor in the coming school year, or because they're unhappy with the platform?
There are twofold with that.
Okay.
We send out the pandemic COVID-19 updates each week, and in sending out the COVID-19, I just realized I should probably check to make sure. But,
So really,
I'm not monitoring
Superintendent
Superintendent Wimmer if she's seeing it.
My
So-
guess is that Superintendent Wimmer has done such a good job of keeping schools safe and open that the Kitty's kids want to come back. And I appreciate that they wanted to have the consistency this year,
Agreed.
but so,
That's the, our success coach at the elementary level does lunch bunch, so that
Uh-huh.
kids can get online and see each other and just have that informal social time.
sure.
And the parents of students who are attending really, really like that. And one of the things about our state assessment day on April 5th, so Wisconsin Board has to be done in person. April 5th is a day that there are no students in the buildings. So we are going to have the virtual students take the forward on that day. It
Oh,
allows
okay.
there to be fewer people in the building. It's a Monday after spring break. Buildings will have been cleaned and be fresh. So we're hopeful that that helps parents feel more comfortable.
Thank you to whoever came up with that idea, that was very considerate.
So I would say that would have done Superintendent Wimmer, Tina, Tim, Aaron, and Kevin. And so they'll come in person to do the assessment on that day. We'll use Silverbrook Badger in the high school. And at the high school level, it's 10th grade and they only take social studies. So they'll be in for the social studies assessment and that's it. But at the start of that, they're going to do some, they're not gonna jump in and start testing right away. They're going to be able to do some social, some games, some things, but socially distanced. So
Sure.
not that they're gonna be hovering over a board game, but they'll be able to be socially distanced and do some icebreaker fun activities. And then some of the parents have commented they're excited to have a little bit of that for their kids. In a regular virtual program, in a regular year, we're not going on field trips this year, period. But regularly, in a virtual program, you have field days where the families meet up for a field trip. So at times, your virtual program has, will still be a program, not a school, so we'll have district residents. So we'll be able to, next year, be taking some field trips as a virtual program. And that will be part of it. So some of those other experiences that you would normally do, when you have a virtual program that is people throughout the state, sometimes you do meetups. So we're going to meet up at the Madison Zoo, or we'll meet up at the Nature Center at Shoal. So, we're all, you'll do meetups when it's beyond your system. We'll have those opportunities throughout the year next year, several of them. But as we look at the program revision for next year, again, we're gauging interest, and then we will have district taught classes. The grades and subjects and how those play out will depend on the students that we have. And so again, we're gauging interest. The grades and things, who's teaching, how many teachers we have from our system will depend on the students that are attending. We have to work on the curriculum and the supports. So what I mean by that is it will be more aligned to what we're doing in person. And so, for example, if I just said second grade may be using bridges, but then some additional supports for math might be a computer-based program. You know, the Edmonton has Exact Path for that. We may be using a different program for that. Some of our schools use something called Education Galaxy. Some of our schools have used Dreambox in the past. And there are others out there that many of us are very familiar with. And so as we move forward, that will be more clearly defined, and the board will be, you know, contracts and things like that will be brought to the board for approval for that. The supports that will be embedded for practice, for assessment, for grading, and for feedback, the things that you shared, Canvas and this, Skyward and this and this and this, being able to utilize Canvas and have the student grade, being able to utilize Canvas for our virtual students will be helpful. We still will, at the high school level, need a partner to work with, especially to open up many of those elective courses that we don't have currently in place. So Chinese, for example, is one that our students really enjoy, and those that are taking it, we've talked before about the popularity of women's studies. We're not ready to begin a women's study program in district, but again, connecting the virtual partners. And we are meeting with WBS about increasing that partnership and talking a little bit more about that with them later this week.
If they take it virtually, can you take the engineering class virtually so you don't have to go to the MSOE?
So,
Are they offering college level
So
classes?
you brought up a really good point of one thing that we have to work on in our communication. So we saw this, Edmonton offers a CNA course. It does not get you the same thing that you get if you take our CNA course here. And so to that point, we need to be clear on some of these and what the difference is, because sometimes we will offer an in-person class and a virtual option with a partner. And they are different for a variety of reasons. And so we may not have enough interest to have a virtual engineering class, but we have that one kid who wants that. And so, yeah, I think we have to be very clear on what our options are for our kids and what they get.
Well, and some of those classes that they're taking at the senior level, I mean, I hate to keep hammering it home, but I have a senior, so I'm kind of seeing what she's taking, and I'm like, you could have just nailed out 3 credits by taking this as a college class. Intro to nutrition, give me a break, there's no way that that's different at the high school level too much than it is at the college level. Intro to hospitality management, I can assure you that is not different at the high school level than it is in college. So, I mean, like some of those courses, it's like, boy, we would have been better off to tap in. I mean, I understand, pandemic aside, you know, as we look long range, why wouldn't we tap into some of those opportunities for college credit for these kids, especially if they're juniors and seniors?
Because it's gonna cost the district more.
Yeah, well, but we're paying money to Edmentum right now, and we have people who aren't happy, so I'd sooner pay more money and have people happy than have people wasting their time. I mean, basically, this is a waste. If you're gonna go into school now for nutrition, you just sat there for a class in high school and you wasted your time. I guess my other question is, when we look at all of this, without getting into anybody's personal business, and I'm not trying to break any HIPAA rules, I would be very interested to compare first semester grades of last year to this year, to understand what kind of a decrease did we see in grade point average, what kind of a decrease did we see across the board in grades. We know that obviously, I'm not blaming this on anyone, it's pandemic related, I get that, but as I have been hammering for an entire year, our students are going to be severely behind. Some may be ahead, I'm not gonna argue that point, but we've gotta look at it as a whole. We have kids who haven't been engaged, and I know they haven't been engaged. And what are we doing to reach them? Like, I get what you're saying, your coordinator's reaching out to them, but give me a break. We all know some of those kids are not reachable at this point. They are checked out completely. So what are we doing to get them graduated or get them back on track? How are we focusing on those kids?
Yeah, so, we have, a variety of things have been occurring. So you've heard about, obviously truancy, issues. Home visits have been done at all levels, with families. We have had, all hands on deck meetings, with, sometimes students are telling their parent, no, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm good. And, showing them, like, see, I'm good. And I literally said to the parent, I know your child is telling you that, I'm telling you they're not good. And so please meet with us. And,
They're good on the
because-
3 of the 15 things they turned in. Oh, that they're supposed to, yeah.
Yep,
They turned in 3, but they're supposed to turn in 15, and on the 3 they're good, but they're behind.
yeah. So we have had that, that's been helpful, because then we have the parents like, oh. And, we do have the all hands on deck meetings and make plans for going forward. Now, at times we're, when the family has not elected to go virtual because of reported health issues, we have brought the students back into in person. If they're very fearful of the potential consequences for their family, we haven't forced them back to in person. We have done wellness checks when, as you said, there are people who are unreachable and we're not able to reach them. We have done wellness checks and asked for some assistance from other agencies in the community for some. So, big picture, I have spoken with our administrators about this right now at the 7-12 level, about as we look at the start of next year, and as we're moving through unit by unit, we have to, across the board, be looking at the students who are with us and who are in class, and what, we can't just start from where we normally would. We have to be looking, again, unit by unit at what they know and can do at the start, and where our targets are, and making sure that we have
Shouldn't
ways
some of
to
those kids
scaffold
just
that.
start, sorry, but you failed for this year and you have to start back in the
Yes.
fall, you have to
Yes.
do your year over? Because I don't want
So
the
we
kids
have
that have
some-
been on track to be
um,
punished because some of these other kids,
That's what I'm asking, like,
Yeah,
how
like-
bad is it?
I
We
would
will
rather,
have, like, so, to retain a student is a huge decision, because you retain a 3rd grader, a 5th grader, a 1st grader, an 8th grader. It's a long-term decision, and so
Yeah.
you take that very,
both of my
very
boys
seriously.
did, one of my boys did 1st grade twice, another one did kindergarten twice. It was not an easy decision, and it had long-term consequences, but I don't think it's fair to the whole rest of the class to get held back because some kids need to catch up.
Or, how you differentiate your instruction and scaffold the student learning to get there.
Mhm.
And I mean it across all subjects.
And this is the consequence of a pandemic. I mean,
Absolutely,
this
yeah.
is, we shouldn't treat this like a normal situation because it's not.
But I don't wanna take this student who normally gets an A, who's like, I am bored out of my mind, I am checked out. And now you've got a whole bigger problem, because now you've got your top students who are checking out, as opposed to, people who checked out because of various reasons. I mean, now you're gonna have a checkout across the board.
Mhm.
So we have sent retention letters, more than ever, because it's such a rare thing normally, right? And the
How much is
decision
it up
to
by? Is it up by
retain
20%,
done.
30%, 10%? What are we talking?
So since I have been here, I think there has, and this is currently my 4th year, I think there was 1 retention in that entire 300 years. So,
And
So
how many
so this
now?
year, 20, 40, 100?
well, we won't know retention until May. We sent heads up letters, I think we sent at least 10 heads up letters.
Huh?
Heads up, if this continues, your child is in jeopardy of being retained.
Okay.
And so that's a whole lot.
Is that a school and family decision, or just a school decision?
And the school has right of placement.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have parents sometimes that reach out to ask that their child be retained for whatever
Sure.
purpose. Still, it is the school decision. And on whether or not to retain the child. And it states that in our board policy. So it's important to give and I said, called it in here, a heads up letter, to give notification that we have strong concerns about how your child is progressing. And we want to let you know that if this rate of progress continues there, we may need to retain them in their current grade for next year. And then it asks for the parents to contact the school about setting up a time to further discuss it. And the letter also states that any decision on retention will be made at the end of the school year. And that's really important because of how people develop, learn, and grow in a normal year, as well as now, changes and flows throughout the year. And sometimes when you're talking about young children at that developmental level, as you're progressing, things can kick in and they can start progressing to a point where you would move them on. And,
Well, out of 6,000 students, I don't think 10 is alarming.
and I will say, we don't send these at the high school level because you either
Okay.
earn a credit or you don't earn a credit.
Okay.
And if you don't earn a credit and it's a graduation requirement.
So
you
even
have
if
to-
it was 3,000 students, that's still not, yeah. I mean, if anything, I would expect a certain number every year.
It's a rare thing. Okay. I'm gonna wrap up the conversation on WVBA by letting you know that, we'll do parent orientations, the week of August 9th and the week of August 16th. And then, the school sites will have open houses as they normally do in fall. And the virtual program will also do an open house, but the parent orientation will be something that they are expected to be at. The student realistically should be there as well, with the parent, but, at the elementary level, it's critical that the parent be there. I would say, for sure above, fifth grade and up, I'd like the student there, but, elementary could be there.
So I just kind of want to get a feel for, I know you guys are still researching things, but you're thinking, Momentum goes away, we're using Canvas and Google Classroom to administer instruction with our own teachers, except for electives at the upper levels. Is that kind of where you're?
Kind of, so
you're-
basically you're using Canvas K-12 for your, in essence, your digital pattern, your
Okay.
touch points, so your learning management system, just like Edmentum is a learning management system with different course pieces underneath it. You use our curricular resources, so Laura mentioned Bridges, I think of Amplify, so my son's in 7th grade, so he does his science through Amplify, which is something we already have built in with Canvas. They would use some of those curricular resources, plus some additional curricular resources that may be used to supplement when you teach in an online environment at that point in time.
Okay. So for those elective classes, let's say in high school accounting, would you, have that virtual student, like we are today if a student is in quarantine, dial in, let's say, because you only have one virtual student taking accounting, dial into a course in our high school that's being taught by our teachers?
With the example of one, I would have it done, I would have them attend through a partner. If we had 15 or 18, I would have a virtual taught section. If our in-house people and curriculum is aligned for that.
So I've had some conversations with CT about, so currently we already offer virtual personal finance. consistency. We've offered it for a couple of years. Us using Canvas, our curriculum, no different if you're face-to-face or virtual. It's just syncs a little different and it's a little more asynchronous than synchronous. We've talked about some additional courses that could be offered virtual. When you get into that, some kids at home permanently, some kids at school permanently, that can be tough depending upon the educational environment in the class. And so there are days in accounting, just because I happen to be in the teacher's room, you know, not that long ago, where sure, that kid could be at home potentially, but there are other days where the interaction is just different, where it might be better off for them to be with a partner if they are just that one. So we will look at some of those options. There are some other courses out there that we could potentially offer that one virtual section with our teachers, with our curriculum. We have some very well-built courses that going virtual will not be that hard of a change. So we have a good master course. It's just making some adjustments in the pacing and the how we're presenting the information to kids in that virtual environment versus being in the classroom at that point in time. So we have some good start there. But there may be some additional opportunities for us to offer some of our electives with our teachers and our content. So that'll be just a case-by-case basis.
I would anticipate that, based on student numbers, for even our core classes, and we've talked to our teachers about this, it may end up being that you are teaching 4 classes. We've talked to the teachers in the virtual program about that, let me clarify that. That maybe they have 4 sections in person and a virtual section. And so it will look different.
What about kids this year who failed at the high school level? Are you going to allow them to do online, or are you going to say this is a privilege as well, unless you've got a medical situation? And nice try, but since you didn't do well last year, you're in the classroom this year. Thank you.
At the start of the year, we'll also,
Let's not reward bad behavior.
Within the first 30 days, if you have not engaged and you are not, we will counsel you back to in-person. And so at the start of the school year, again, parent orientation's in August, so we will be starting first day. And at 5 days, we'll do a check. Everybody should be in enrolling. And if you're not, you're getting the contact, right? And then, again, after 10 days, if you're not showing progress, we're gonna be connecting with you and your parents to say, hey, what's going on? But by the 30th day, if you'll be back to class if you have not engaged. I wanted to take a few minutes to go over some of a summary of our curricular review. And you have in your packet the public comments as of, I think as of Friday. As of Thursday. On Friday, did people leave any comments? Okay, never mind. So yeah, as of Friday, any public comment is taken right from their notes and added on here. Where you see a new row on the table, it is a new person commenting on the social studies resource. And so you can read through that. Some of the general comments are, well, you heard at the board meeting, we had one community member come and speak. And generally they're wondering about the curricular change, that it seems different from just teaching Roman history and ancient world history at the 6th grade level, and it is.
Is it a curriculum change or a resource change?
Well, when we adopted the new standards, in reviewing those and implementing the standards as identified by the state and adopted by us, it is a shift in how we're teaching. So it's not just about ancient civilizations, it's about the migration of humans. I mean, if you look through, I did bring all of the resources that have been considered and rejected. The National Geographic is the one that we selected for a variety of reasons, but really because of the significance is how the instruction is delivered through this program.
I was gonna say, because the migration of cultures has been happening since the beginning of human existence, and how it's presented, I think, is the issue, not that it's being presented.
And all, like, these same topics are in the other series as well. And so, for example, in the migration issue in here, it talks about certain locations and how people have moved throughout those locations. There are 3 different text levels, and what that means is they're written at different reading levels. So the 3 different texts will have a slightly different area of focus. And for the teacher, the teacher's edition, in the teacher's guide, so for example, you can see the color differences here. The color differences indicate what is the case study at the blue, orange, and green level. And the students who have a text that's orange on the back, blue on the back, green on the back, that's the case study that's in here aligns to that.
And that's based, the colors difference is based on reading level?
Correct.
Within the grade level?
Correct.
Okay.
Within the range. So the reading levels of the, I don't know if I have the Alexa levels listed here for all of the books. One of them will be, the reading level range will be slightly below grade level, and one will be on grade level, one will be above grade level. It helps to facilitate some differentiation of the teachers for the students.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent aspect of the tool. I mean, I don't disagree with some of the bias. I'm not gonna go as far as saying it's propaganda or evil or anything, but, I mean, there are, my junior in high school, he attends a virtual academy that uses classical resources, and, you know, there's no bias. And I do think there's a bias here. I mean, I don't wanna undo all the work everyone's done, but were classical resources considered?
Yep, so those are, what I think you would be referring to as classical resources. This is the one that, I shared it before, for our 6th graders that many of our teachers liked. It has a lot in it that we're not teaching in 6th grade. Well, the volume is very large. And it has a lot of things that we're not teaching in it. It's also in how the information is presented, and the readability for all students, how the information is presented, as far as in an engaging way, in a way that students are hands-on, eyes-on. That was an important part of this. It's a different type of, when you approach reading through a text like this versus reading in a concentrated, focused way. It also changes how you analyze and utilize text features in your instruction. But these are all here. You are welcome to look them over, and I encourage you to look through and see some of the ways that things are actually worded in these texts. Sometimes our own interpretation of how we're reading that and to one of the members who came to see it, they're like, okay, so how it's written is fine, but how, we don't know how, and then we never know how the person teaching is going to introduce that, and that was their point of it.
Well, isn't
How
some
does
of
that have to
that,
do with
for heaven's
anything?
sake,
Yeah,
I was
that's-
just gonna say, I mean, that, you would teach it a different way than I would teach it
Yeah.
versus the way you would teach it. That's the whole point, and that's why we hire professionals to actually do their job. We're not allowing the public in who doesn't have a degree in education to teach a resource to our students. This is exactly what I was talking about at the last meeting. I'm okay to, I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate the time that was taken, but at some point in time, you have to have a little bit of common sense in all of this, and assume that things that happen in the classroom, you can't control everything. You are not here, public, to control everything that goes on in education. You are here to give your input, and yes, as taxpayers, you certainly have an input, but allowing 6 people to hijack an entire curriculum, when our professional people have decided this is the resource that best matches, I don't think it's fair to anyone who's been involved in the process. In fact, it's a slap in the face to anyone who's been involved in the process, that at the 11th hour, we would say, oh, well, Sue doesn't like it, so we're just gonna scrap the whole thing. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Do we have the teachers' comments on the top couple of resources? Maybe we saw those
I-
at some point.
Yep, and I can absolutely send those to you, yes, we do. And, we do, and we've talked about them, and we talked about them multiple times this year. But it was in my last board update too, and,
Okay.
it will be in the board packet. So I will send those to you. In fact, do you wanna just, well, I'll just send them to you.
I do think the lens through which you view things says a lot more about the person viewing it than necessarily the resource. I mean, you can find, if you're carrying a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And some people are just looking for, they're looking for things to criticize without offering any solutions. And that's not productive, in my opinion.
I have shared before that this was not the teacher's top choice, this was the teacher's top choice for our students. And the difference is in how we instruct and where we're headed as a system. This aligns with that, and we do need to do professional development with our teachers on how to teach in an inquiry-based, with inquiry.
So you get a book like that instead of, looks like a giant pamphlet instead of this textbook? I'm more excited about that book, but I'm a total geography nerd, so.
I'll give them both to you so you can take a look through them. But there are multiple, remember there's multiple texts here. So.
But each
as
one
you're
is,
saying-
because each one is for a different reading level, each student only gets one.
No, so if you're doing migration and studying migration, you get the migration text. Then when you're doing globalization.
Okay, so
you
it's like
get
a
the-
series,
Correct.
series within each color.
Yes, so then within
category.
here,
This is for 6th grade?
yes.
I don't know, that feels more like something I'd be doing in 3rd grade, to be quite honest, with a little pamphlet or something. I don't know. I'm a little confused. So this is this is what our teachers chose, but we went off the rails and chose something completely different.
Our teachers don't choose, they make recommendations.
Okay, this is what our teachers recommended, but we, being you and your department, went off the rails and chose something different.
And I wouldn't say, they reviewed all of these resources. They did, all of these resources, they had the opportunity to review.
Uh-huh.
And so, they had them in their hands and had the chance to review them. And yes, this is aligned to how instruction in our system is working with the gradual release model and working with engaging students in the text. This is not aligned to that. And again, that's in the notes. And it's,
But I can see why there's concern then, and why there's 3 or 4 different stories going around, right? We've got the public who's got this to say, we've got teachers who are, probably, maybe in a meeting are saying, sure, we'll support that, but quietly are talking that they're not supporting it. We've got that going on. So we've got communication problem here. So where are we going from here? When does this have to be implemented? What are you doing to correct the communication problem?
Yep. So when we will be, as I said, planning professional development. We spoke with the sixth grade team last week. I spoke with Lance about the professional development yesterday. And after this meeting, we have teaching and learning where we have it outlined and we're gonna delve into it a little deeper. We are looking to do a full day of professional development yet this year. And then, again, in August, before they would implement in fall.
I mean, and obviously we've had changes in leadership with Superintendent Wimmer, so not to put her on the spot, but perhaps it would be appropriate to hear from her at this point in time to hear what her thoughts are or what the theories are on, you know, where she sees this going in the future.
I'm gonna turn it back on.
Thanks. So one of the things, you know, as I'm engaged with this committee or board or committee, et cetera, is I believe in a strong process. And that, yep, while we need to make change and we may agree or disagree with change, that we can always lean on a process and that voices are heard, cultivated, et cetera. But at the end of the day, whether you're a community member, a teacher, et cetera, we may agree and disagree, but the outcome of the instruction will be stronger for having gone through that process. I think we, given the communication and how this was started and stopped, what you see is Laura and the team kind of regrouping, going back, checking in with the teachers. Some of the teachers are new around what were their points of feedback so that we can be in attention to that. The other piece, when Tanya was talking about, you know, a classical approach, there are certain, you know, documents that we would use, supplementary resources, so that no one textbook does everything. Otherwise, we would all be using it. So you have to go through a process where you're surfacing those things, figuring out what are the supplementary materials. You know, Nancy, you were just speaking to, you know, what's a reading level on this versus this? How are the teachers going to differentiate? It's very easy, I think, sometimes for us to reach for an easy, what I would call a canned package of curriculum where it tells me what to say, what to think, you know, but we really need to look a little bit deeper and get some more ducks in a row on process so that we have a sense of what the units of study really look like. So that we can say, yeah, this is a primary resource and here are some secondary resources, and that our teachers feel that they have what they need, whether it's the training, it's orientation to materials, or they've had time to write units and pull in those supplementary pieces that they're feeling that they need. So there's a little work to be done still at that, with that teacher level and the principal. And I think, as you said, it's one of those things where, you know, we can always look back, but you get a process interrupted mid-pandemic and teacher movement, and then I think sometimes when we rate things, one of the things I've seen on this process is a false perception of if there's a rating tool and it has numbers, people perceive there to be a winner, like, oh, well, you know, by points, this was the winner. It's like, no, this is designed for feedback to create quality instruction. So there's some things that I would want to shift future forward for sure.
Thank you.
And the professional development that that the teachers will have, Jen actually did a great job in alluding to that and kind of summarizing that. But it's first on the instructional process, and then gets into the content and the resource. So in the instructional process, the units have been defined, and that's been out for some time. And those units, again, further development because they're outlined right now. So then what are the primary resources for those, and then what are other supplemental resources? Some of these, I mean, they lend themselves really well to, here's an understanding. Now, if we can, as we're doing our inquiry, what is the current situation with regard to that, especially because things are changing all the time. So here's and understanding his definition now, what is it like currently? Remember that 7th grade does more of a world history perspective.
So process-wise, where are we? What are we coming back in May, June? What are we talking here? When is this going to move forward?
So this will, the earliest it will move forward is April right now.
But it sounds like there's some work to be done before we move forward.
Any other questions on this topic? Superintendent Weaver, anything else to add?
Nothing at this time.
Kevin, Heidi, anything else to add?